The bus stop smelled of rain-soaked concrete and diesel fumes, and the single-dad veteran stood there with his worn backpack and tired eyes, unaware that two roaring bikes slowing down behind him were about to turn an ordinary evening into a moment that would rip open old scars and test everything he had buried since the war. His fingers tightened around the strap of his bag, not in fear but in instinct, the kind that never truly leaves a man who once learned how quickly life can be taken away, because the couple of bikers circling him didn't see a father waiting to get home to his child. They saw an easy target, never imagining that the quiet man at the bus stop had once been a Navy SEAL trained to survive chaos, loss, and violence far worse than anything this street could offer. Before the story goes any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us not to judge a soul by its silence, please take a moment to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to channel name to support meaningful stories like this. The veteran's name was Daniel Carter, though hardly anyone knew it anymore. To the city, he was just another struggling single dad, the kind people glanced past without really seeing. His jacket was old, his boots scuffed, and his shoulders carried the invisible weight of years that no civilian eye could measure. He had lost his wife to illness 2 years earlier, and since then his world had shrunk to school pickups, late-night bills, and the quiet promise he made to his young daughter every morning that he would always come back home. That promise mattered more to him than pride, more than anger, more than proving who he used to be. The bus stop was part of his routine, a small pause between long workdays and bedtime stories, a place where he could breathe before becoming dad again. The bikers, however, brought noise where there was calm. Their leather jackets gleamed with arrogance, engines rumbling like a challenge. They circled slowly, laughing, feeding off each other's bravado. To them, Daniel looked like a man who wouldn't fight back, someone who would shrink, apologize, or hand over whatever little he had. The streetlights flickered, and a few other commuters pretended not to notice, eyes glued to phones, bodies angled away. Daniel felt the familiar isolation creep in, the same one he remembered from deployment nights when fear hung heavy but no one spoke it aloud. His heart didn't race, instead, it settled into a focused stillness, the kind that had once kept him alive in hostile places far from home. Life hadn't been gentle with Daniel since he left the Navy. The transition back to civilian life was harder than any mission briefing had warned him. Nightmares came without invitation, memories surfaced at the worst moments, and the sense of brotherhood he once relied on was gone. After his wife passed, the silence in their small apartment grew louder than gunfire ever had. He took whatever work he could find, stacking shelves at night, fixing appliances during the day, swallowing his pride because his daughter needed stability more than he needed dignity. Each sacrifice carved him down a little, but he kept moving forward, believing that endurance itself was a form of love. As the bikers drew closer, one of them cutting the engine just enough to make the threat unmistakable, Daniel felt the old conflict rise inside him. He didn't want violence. He had seen too much of it, lived too deeply in its aftermath. He wanted to go home, heat up leftovers, help with homework, and tuck his daughter into bed. Yet the world doesn't always allow quiet men to remain quiet. When fear is mistaken for weakness, it can force a choice no one wants to make. Daniel's jaw tightened, not in anger, but in resolve, as his mind calculated distance, movement, exits, and consequences with frightening clarity. The bikers escalated, stepping closer, invading his space, feeding off the power they believed they held. Around them, the street seemed to hold its breath. Daniel thought of his daughter's smile that morning, the way she hugged him before school, trusting him completely. That trust grounded him. He reminded himself that strength wasn't about proving dominance, it was about control, restraint, and protecting what mattered most. His body stayed relaxed, posture neutral, eyes steady. Years of training had taught him that calm unsettles aggressors more than fear ever could. When the situation finally tipped, it happened fast, like a storm breaking without warning. One biker made a move meant to intimidate, but it was sloppy, careless. Daniel reacted not out of rage but reflex, his movements precise and efficient, almost invisible in their speed. What followed wasn't a brutal display but a swift dismantling of threat, a lesson delivered in seconds that left the bikers shocked, restrained, and suddenly aware that they had gravely misjudged the man they targeted. The bus stop transformed from a place of fear into a scene of stunned silence, commuters staring wide-eyed at the quiet father who now stood breathing steadily, ensuring no one else was hurt. As sirens approached in the distance, Daniel felt no triumph, only exhaustion. The past he worked so hard to bury had surfaced again, reminding him that no matter how far he walked from it, it would always be part of who he was. Authorities arrived, questions were asked, statements taken. Witnesses spoke up, describing how the veteran had tried to avoid conflict, how he had acted only when cornered. The biker's arrogance dissolved into consequences, and for once, the truth cut through assumptions. In the days that followed, word spread quietly. Neighbors who barely nodded before now offered help. A teacher at his daughter's school thanked him for his service after recognizing his name from a news snippet. Daniel didn't seek attention, but he accepted the kindness with humility, realizing that maybe his struggle didn't have to be so lonely. The incident forced him to confront his own fear of being seen, of being known not just as a survivor but as a father doing his best with what he had left. At home, when his daughter hugged him tighter than usual, Daniel felt something inside him ease. He didn't tell her the details, only that sometimes people make wrong choices and sometimes others step in to stop them. He wanted her to grow up believing the world, despite its darkness, still held goodness worth fighting for. That night, as she slept, Daniel allowed himself to feel proud, not of his strength, but of his restraint, his survival, and his refusal to let bitterness define him. Life didn't magically become easier. Bills still arrived, shifts were still long, and memories still lingered. But something had shifted. Daniel started attending a local veteran support group, reconnecting with others who understood the invisible battles. He found himself smiling more, sleeping better, allowing hope to creep back into spaces once ruled by grief. The bus stop incident became less about violence and more about recognition, the reminder that heroes don't always wear uniforms anymore, and that the strongest people often look like the most ordinary. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you to look twice at the quiet ones, to choose compassion over judgment, please take a moment now to like this video, share it, and subscribe to channel name so we can continue bringing stories that matter to your screen. And before this story ends, we have one special request for you. Please comment below and tell us what this story made you feel, because your words help build a community of empathy and understanding. As Daniel waited at the bus stop weeks later, the same rain-slicked pavement beneath his boots, he stood a little taller, not because he feared the world, but because he had learned that even in moments of danger, dignity and kindness could survive. The city moved around him, unaware of the quiet strength in its midst, and that was okay. Daniel no longer needed recognition. He had something far more powerful waiting at home, a child who believed in him completely, and a future slowly rebuilding itself, one calm, resilient step at a time.